What we did in both positional and keyword arguments is that we passed the number of arguments which were known beforehand, meaning that we defined the process order function and there were four parameters. And while using positional arguments, we had to pass those four parameters in the same order with the same data type. In case of keyword arguments, we did not have to pass the arguments in the same order, but we had to pass the same number of arguments with the same name and same data type. And data type should always be sent correctly, otherwise the processing or the code block that you have defined inside of the function might fail. Now, having said that, let's say you have scenario wherein you do not know how many parameters would go. You do not know how many arguments you'll have to send. So how do you handle those kind of situations? So Python provides ways to accept variable input parameters using something called args and kwargs. And args and kwargs are very famous in Python because in most of the cases, all the Python class definition and object definition at least, or method definition, you will come across args and kwargs. Now let's see args and kwargs and discuss it from the basic. What is this arg? Arg is basically passing unknown number of arguments using a single asterisk or a single star, meaning that you do not know how many arguments are there. The number of arguments can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 10, it can be 100, it can be thousands also. If you do not know how do you do it, you send the argument in the function, any number of arguments, and those are accepted in a variable which starts with asterisk or star. And all the values are accepted as tuple. Why it is accepted as tuple? Because it makes sense to accept it as tuple because you do not know how many arguments would be there. So if it is a tuple, it will go ahead and accept it, and then you can run a for loop and get all the elements in the tuple irrespective of the number of elements that we have. So that's why tuple makes more sense. So let's say I define this process order like this: star order details. And first time, let's say I'm sending order ID, order price, quantity, description, which is fine. Second time, I might be passing only order ID and order price. And third time, I might be passing something completely different, which is order ID, customer name, and customer address. And the code in the function should be as such that it handles all these or differential arguments. The onus lies on the program itself, the block of code that you are defining inside of the function. The onus would remain on that block of code to handle this variable input parameters or variable input arguments. Now, this star order details is typically known as args or star args. Similarly, you can pass unknown number of keyword arguments using double star, which is accepted as dictionary. So what happens? Let's say we define something like this, define process order, and we can send order ID with a value, order price with a value, quantity with a value, and description with a value. We can also pass other values like order ID, customer name, and zip code. And all these will be accepted as dictionary inside of the function. So the key would be order ID, value would be 12345, key would be order price, value would be 23.45, so on and so forth. This star order details is called args, and double star order details is called kwargs or keyword arguments. And typically we use star args and star double star kwargs in Python itself because it is known to everyone, and it has become a best practice to use these names only, star args and star kwargs. And I'll be using this itself. But let me show you how it works. So I have defined three functions: process, customer, process order, and variable input. So I've defined three variables, A1, B2, and C. Nice video. And let me call process customer with A, B, C. So this is args. Now it will be captured in asterisk args. I could have mentioned asterisk cust also. So this is also fine. Now let me print this. Now while printing, you do not use the asterisk anymore. you'll use the variable name which is cast. Now if I execute this, so it is showing me as a tuple 1 2 nice video. Now let me send one more, order ID 1 2 3 4 5, and now I can mention order ID here, and if I print, order ID would also be shown as 1 2 3 4 5. So because the function is accepting all the variables as tuple, it does not matter how many arguments are there, because all the arguments would be captured as tuple. Now if you have to, let's say, print individual elements, you know how to do that. Let's say for I in cast, print I. Of course you can do multiple modifications and return also. Let me return. So now I'm returning the fourth element of the customer variable. So I'm returning the third element. Now one thing is that, so let's say if you press 3 spaces and if I execute this, it is giving an error, indentation error. Unindent does not match any outer indentation level. So you can imagine how important indentation is. So better is to press an enter and let the ID handle the indents, and just press one backspace. So I'm returning customer element number 3, and that would be my order ID. So order underscore ID equal to process customer with this, and then let me print the order ID here. Now why am I doing this? Just writing a few blocks of additional code, that's it, nothing else. So now if I execute, so it is showing everything, it is tuple, and it is printing also for all the cases, and then it is showing the order ID because I'm returning the order ID here in the first. Now in the second one, what will I do? I will call process order, and I'll pass, let's say, A equal to 1, B equal to 2, order quantity equal to 25, and maybe order price equals to $1,500. And let me print kwarg here. Now if I execute this, as you can see, A equal to 1, B equal to 2, order quantity is 25, and order price is 1,500. Order A is the key, B is the key, order quantity is the key, and order price is the key. And it has been accepted in kwargs variable in the form of a dictionary. Now if I have to print, let's say, only one of them, you know how to do that. So kwargs and followed by the key, let's say the key is order price, and I can do other processing also. So as you can see, order price has been printed. Pretty neat. All right, so the next one is I want to pass both args and kwargs. Can I do that? Apparently yes, because Python provides a way to do that. So here what will I do? I'll mention star args and then star star kwargs. So initially I will send positional parameter, then I'll send keyword parameter. Okay, so these are the keyword parameter, and what will I do? I'll use this, and it should be variable input. I'm passing keyword arguments, and I also want to pass positional arguments, but I do not know how many arguments would be there. So now here I would pass A, B, and C, and here I would pass order quantity, order price, and order ID equal to 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, now let me print args and print kwargs. So what would happen is that the first 3 would be considered in args and the remaining would be considered as kwargs. So I'm passing both positional argument and keyword argument like this. So if you see, the first one is 1 2 nice video, and then order quantity, order price, and 1,500. Now if I want, I can pass A equal to 1, B equal to 100, and C equal to 1000 also. Now if I execute this, ABC would be taken as positional arguments and the remaining would be taken as keyword arguments. Now let me add one more. Let's say order ID. I want to pass order ID also. So now here order ID is 1 2 3 4 5, and let's say here it is 102408. Let's say this is the order ID. Now what will I do? If I execute this, these 4 would be taken as positional arguments and would be captured in the tuple, and all these would be taken in as keyword arguments and would be captured in the dictionary. Now if I execute this, so as you can see, we have 1 2 nice video 1 2 3 4 5, which is actually this order ID, And here the order ID is 102408, which is a keyword argument. This has not been taken as keyword argument, neither this ABC. So this is how we can use args and kwargs, and we can pass positional and keyword arguments also. And let me show you one more thing, a few more things rather. Now what will I do? Let me add customer name here, and then customer ID, and then customer address line address 1. And these can be positional and keyword also. So if it is positional, I'll mention the name as 3IAM, that is the customer name. ID would be 1012, ID would be 0101 2025, and address, I'm passing address as first underscore addr1 equal to, all right, so this is how what I'm doing. And sorry, I removed a. Now let's see what happens. Will it work? So I'm already seeing some error here. If I execute this, it is saying positional argument follows keyword argument, which means I cannot mention this. I cannot mention customer address here. So what I'll have to do is that I'll have to mention customer address somewhere here. So now I have positional argument, customer name, customer ID, then A, B, C, and here I have order ID A equal to 1, etc., etc. Alright, so let me execute this. Now it is giving error. Got multiple values for argument cust address 1 because I've sent cust name, cust ID, order ID, etc. So you should match it properly, correct? So what it is saying is that it has got multiple values for customer ADDR1. Alright, so you should not do it. So better maybe what we can do is we can remove this keyword argument, a positional argument completely, and we mention the customer name here. Let's say customer name, and now if I execute, again it got multiple values for argument customer name. Why? Because customer name is A here and then B. So it becomes really complicated. So instead of doing this, what you should do is you should use this kwargs and args. Execute using only kwargs and args, otherwise you'll get error. So now I can send this completely without any problem. I can send this variable input and it should be accepted by this particular function because the first one is 1, 2, nice video, and remaining all are keyword arguments. And here also I can add additional positional argument also. Let's order ID. And now if I execute this, now we have 1, 2, nice video, and then order ID, and then the dictionary. So this is how args and kwargs are used, and this is a very useful feature in Python. In almost all Python programs that you see, you'll find args and kwargs for sure. So that concludes our Python basics, and let me summarize what we had discussed here. I talked about setting up PyCharm, and then I created a project and a virtual environment. So project creation is basically creating a folder, and while creating the project I mentioned the Python interpreter, which is the main interpreter in the operating system, and the virtual environment was created using that interpreter, which is basically a shortcut of the main OS interpreter. But if we install additional libraries, those would be stored in the folder or the project folder that we have created. Then we talked about print function and input function, and by now you might have understood the importance of print function because for debugging, for printing, whatever, we need print function. What happens with print function is that everything is converted to string. Remember that. The next one is input function, and input function is used to take user input. Then we talked about conditional expressions like if, for, while. Now using if statement, you can mention a condition and then execute certain block of code based on those conditions. For and while are loops. So for loop starts at a point and ends at a predefined point. Whereas while loop is a little different. It will keep on executing until a condition is till a condition is satisfied. If the condition is not satisfied, it will exit out. And sometimes it might become dangerous because it can create an infinite loop if the conditions are not handled properly. And then the remaining section of this particular video, I talked about functions only. I started with function definition and the return keyword. We define function using the def keyword followed by the name of the function and then the open and close brackets. We can return one or more variables using a function also. So if we return a variable, those variables should be assigned to another variable in the main program. So that's why return keyword is used. Then we talked about function scope, wherein I introduced you to LGB rule, a local, global, and built-in rule. Now these rules apply for functions only or within the function. And if you want to override the LGB rule, you can use the global keyword. Then I talked about arguments and how we pass arguments to functions, and we can modify arguments also. So if we pass list or set or dictionary, we can modify individual elements of those arguments, not the entire variable. Then we talked about positional and keyword arguments, wherein we define a function with certain variables. What you have to do is that you have to pass those many number of variables and in the same order in positional arguments, and in keyword argument the order can be different, but you have to pass values with the same names. What if you do not want to pass, you do not know how many variables you are passing and what names are there? So in that case you can use args and kwargs. So that's all about Python basics. Now let's proceed to Python advanced section.